A boy whose body was not growing, whose family could not even afford the $900 per month needed for his medical treatment. A boy who was rejected by the biggest clubs in Argentina. At the age of 13, leaving his mother, leaving his country, and carrying a contract written on a napkin, he left for Spain. Night after night, he cried alone in the room of La Masia. Every night he injected medicine into his own body. No one imagined that this thin, shy boy would one day leave the entire world speechless. This is not just Messi's story. This is the story of something impossible. Watch how a broken body went on to write history. Before starting the video, let's briefly understand how today's documentary has been structured. This is not just the biography of a footballer named Messi. This is a journey where we have presented every important chapter of Lionel Messi's life separately, step by step, so that you do not just learn the events, but also feel every single moment. So, let's briefly discuss the roadmap through which we have organized Messi's life story. We have divided Messi's biography into a total of 13 important chapters so that the complete picture of his life can be presented, such as Chapter 1, Roots and the First Cry. His birth, Rosario and family, his grandmother Celia, Newell's Old Boys, and La Máquina del 87, the diagnosis of growth hormone deficiency, and the financial crisis surrounding his treatment. Chapter 2, The Door That Closed and the Door That Opened. The rejection from Argentine clubs, including River Plate, his contact with Barcelona, the famous napkin agreement, leaving his family behind and moving to Spain, and the painful farewell at the airport. Chapter 3, The Lonely Nights of La Masia. The early days at Barcelona's academy, homesickness, language barriers, taking injections alone at night, and slowly proving himself on the field. Chapter 4, The Day a Boy Touched the Sky. His first training match with the senior team, his friendship with Ronaldinho, his senior debut in 2004, his first goal, the serious injury in 2006, the famous Getafe goal in 2007, winning the treble in 2009, and his first Ballon d'Or. Chapter 5, The Jersey That Felt Like a Thorn Piercing His Heart. Repeated failures in finals with the national team. The 2007 Copa America, losing the 2014 World Cup final, the 2015 Copa America defeat, and criticism from the people of his country. Chapter 6, The Day a Heart Broke in Front of Everyone. Missing a penalty in the 2016 Copa America final, announcing his retirement from the national team with tears in his eyes, the emotional requests from the people of his country, changing his decision and returning, and building a new team under Coach Scaloni. Chapter 7, The Night of the Maracana, where a 28-year wait came to an end. The 2021 Copa America, the final on Brazilian soil, the historic victory at the Maracana, kneeling on the field and crying, and winning his first major international trophy with the national team. Chapter 8, Having to Leave the Place Where I Grew Up. Barcelona's financial crisis, the obstacles created by La Liga's regulations, the tearful farewell press conference in 2021, joining PSG, and the struggle to adapt in Paris. Chapter 9, Fulfilling a Lifetime Dream in the Deserts of Qatar. The 2022 World Cup, the shocking defeat against Saudi Arabia, the comeback, the journey through the knockout stages, the dramatic battle against France in the Lusail final, victory on penalties, and finally lifting the World Cup trophy. Chapter 10, A New Sunrise on a New Continent. Joining Inter Miami, the rise of soccer in the United States, an injury-filled period, and winning the 2024 Copa America. Chapter 11, The Final Battle, the Final Tears. The 2026 World Cup, the historic record of playing in his sixth World Cup, a dramatic semi-final victory against England, a defeat in the final against Spain, and tears while leaving the field. Chapter 12, What Messi Left Behind. A summary of his entire life and 5 major life lessons: the importance of believing in oneself, turning limitations into strengths, overcoming failures, silent determination, and unwavering love for one's country. Chapter 13. The Man Behind the Curtain. His personal life, his relationship and marriage with Antonella, his children, the historic rivalry with Ronaldo, career statistics and legacy, and his charitable work. So let's begin. Chapter 1. Roots and the First Cry. How small can a person be born who would one day write history while carrying an entire continent on his shoulders? The answer to this question is hidden in a small industrial city of Argentina. Its name is Rosario. Built along the banks of the Parana River, this city is neither a capital nor a tourist destination. It is a city of workers. A city filled with steel factories, smoke-rising chimneys, and the sounds of exhausted people returning home after sunset. But this very city gave Argentine football 2 legends. Che Guevara was born here as a revolutionary, and several decades later, from this same soil, another silent revolutionary of football would be born. June 24, 1987. In an ordinary hospital in Rosario, a baby was born. His father, Jorge Messi, worked at a steel factory and would return home after his shifts with an exhausted body. His mother, Celia Cuxatini, worked at a magnet manufacturing factory. They were not wealthy. Neither of them knew that the name of this newborn child would one day be spoken in every corner of the world. His name was Lionel Andres Messi. He was the 4th child in the family. 3 siblings had already been born before him: Rodrigo, Matias, and Maria Sol. Football was already mixed into the blood of the Messi family. His father himself played for a local club, and his uncles played as well. Sunday afternoons were spent with family barbecues and conversations about football. In an environment like this, it was natural that a child would grow up with a ball in his hands. But no one could have imagined that these tiny hands would one day control the ball in a way that would look like magic to the eyes of the world. The first dream in his grandmother's arms. One of the most important people in Leo's life was his grandmother, Celia Oliveira. When his parents were busy with work, she was the person who took little Leo to the field, watched her grandchildren play, and stood beside them when coaches said, "He is too small. I can't let him play." Leo was only 4 or 5 years old at the time. His older brothers and cousins played for a local club called Grandoli. One day, the team was short of one player. The coach was hesitant. How could he put such a small child on the field? Then grandmother Celia insisted, "Let him play." That was one single moment. If his grandmother had not insisted that day, history might have been different. Leo stepped onto the field. What he did after receiving the ball amazed even the coach. A tiny body, but a connection with the ball that seemed natural from birth. He moved past one opponent after another, as if the ball was a part of his feet. That day began a journey whose destination no one knew at the time. Unfortunately, Celia did not live for many more years. In 1998, when Leo was only 11 years old, his grandmother passed away. But Messi never forgot her. Even today, after every goal, he looks toward the sky and raises both hands, a silent tribute dedicated to his grandmother. Many times in interviews, Messi has said that this one person laid the foundation of his football career, the person who believed in him when everyone else had doubts. Newell's Old Boys, where the first seeds of the dream were planted. At the age of 6, Leo joined the youth academy of Rosario's famous club, Newell's Old Boys. The legendary coach Marcelo Bielsa also played for this club during his career. After Leo joined Newell's youth team, what happened there sounds like a fairy tale. This team went nearly 4 years without losing a single match. Locally, the team was known as La Máquina del 87, the Machine of 87, because almost all the players on the team were born in 1987. But Leo was not a star on this team at first. He was the smallest, the thinnest, a boy who often stood quietly in the corner of the field. His teammates later recalled that Leo was unusually shy off the field. He spoke very little and did not mix with others on his own. But the moment the ball came to his feet, he changed, as if a sleeping lion inside that shy boy suddenly awakened. His coach, Eduardo Tazzi, said many times, "I have spent 40 years in football, but I have never seen talent like this boy's in my life. His relationship with the ball is something magical." But inside this machine, behind this incredible talent, a hidden problem was slowly beginning to appear, a problem that could have almost stopped the entire dream. A sign that no one understood at first. When Leo was 8 or 9 years old, his family noticed something unusual. He was extremely short compared to children of his age. At first, everyone thought it was normal. After all, not every child grows at the same speed. But even after months passed, the situation did not change. Instead, the difference became more obvious. On the field, when opponents of the same age stood taller than him, Leo's small body seemed even smaller. The family took him to a doctor. After the tests, the news that came back shook the entire family. Leo was suffering from growth hormone deficiency. His body was not producing the hormones necessary to grow at a normal rate. Without treatment, he might never reach a normal height. This news was not just a medical report. It was the first wall standing in front of a dream. Because the cost of treatment was extremely high, around $900 per month, which was beyond the ability of someone like Jorge Messi, a factory worker. Every night, Leo had to inject hormones into his stomach or legs as part of his hormone therapy. A child whose feet had magic with the ball had to fight against needles every night, silently enduring the pain because he knew this was his only way to continue playing. This moment was the first great struggle of Messi's life. And where this struggle would eventually lead depended on one decision, a decision that would change the future of the family and perhaps the entire history of football. A question at the end of the chapter. A child who takes painful injections every night just so he can continue playing. His family does not have the money to continue his treatment. A local club is willing to help, but for how long? The answer to this question will change the direction of Messi's life. A decision that will push the family toward leaving their country, from the familiar streets of Rosario to an unknown continent across the sea. In the next chapter, River Plate's rejection, Barcelona's historic contract written on a napkin, and the heartbreaking story of a 13-year-old boy leaving his own country. Chapter 2, The Door That Closed and the Door That Opened. An evening in Rosario. Jorge Messi was sitting at the small kitchen table of his house. In front of him was a piece of paper. No matter how many times he added the numbers, the calculation always stopped at the same place, $900 per month. His son's medical treatment cost. Almost his entire monthly salary. In the next room slept a 13-year-old boy whose leg received a needle every night, whose body did not know how to grow on its own, but whose feet made it feel as if time stopped whenever the ball came to him. Jorge knew that it was impossible for him to arrange this money alone. So, he went to the doors of Argentina's biggest and most prestigious clubs. First, he went to River Plate, the legendary club from Buenos Aires, whose youth academy had produced countless stars. The club officials watched the boy play. They shook their heads. They admitted that he had talent. But when Jorge brought up the cost of treatment, a kind of silence filled the room. The answer came softly but clearly. We cannot afford to cover this expense. One door closed. Jorge visited several more clubs. The answer was almost always the same. The talent was impressive, but no one was willing to take the risk. A 13-year-old boy whose body might not even grow properly. No one wanted to make such a huge investment behind him. Imagine that moment. A father returning home with an exhausted body, with every no adding another layer of disappointment inside his heart. And at home, a boy was waiting, unaware of the conversations adults were having about his future. He only knew one thing. Tomorrow after school, he would go to the field and play with the ball again. A phone call from across the ocean. At exactly this moment, the direction of events changed by a single thread. The Messi family had a distant relative living in Spain, in Barcelona. Through him, news reached Barcelona's club. There was a boy in Argentina, 13 years old, short in height, but unbelievable with the ball at his feet. Normally, Europe's biggest clubs do not trust someone from so far away without seeing them first. But by coincidence, Barcelona's youth department director at the time, Carles Rexach, was in Argentina, looking at another player. he was requested to take a look at this boy. Rexach agreed. A small practice session was arranged. 13-year-old Leo stepped onto the field, short, thin, and quiet. But what happened after the ball reached his feet remained forever in Rexach's eyes. After watching him for only a few minutes, he understood that this boy could not be allowed to slip away. But there was a problem: time. The agreement had to be finalized quickly with Barcelona's sporting director at the time, otherwise the family might move somewhere else. Yet at that moment, there was no official document available. Then Rexach did something that would become one of the most famous moments in football history. Sitting at a restaurant table, on a paper napkin that was available nearby, he wrote down a promise. Barcelona would sign this boy. There was no legal language, no official letterhead. Just a napkin and a sentence written on it that changed the destiny of an entire family. Today, that napkin is preserved inside a glass case as a piece of history. A difficult decision. But signing a napkin did not mean all problems were solved. Barcelona had agreed, that was true, but it also meant the entire family had to leave Rosario, leave behind familiar streets, familiar fields, and familiar people. They had to cross the Atlantic Ocean. A difficult discussion began within the family. Jorge and Leo would go to Spain, but his mother Celia, his two older brothers, and his sister would remain in Rosario, at least in the beginning. The family was being divided into two parts, just to keep the dream of a 13-year-old boy alive. Think about it. At the age of 13, a moment in life where you have to choose between your mother's embrace and an uncertain dream. Leo himself later said many times that this decision was one of the most difficult periods of his life. He had to leave his friends, the familiar fields, and his beloved Club Newell's. And he was going to a country where, although the language was almost the same, the culture was completely different and no one knew him. But there was only one truth in front of his eyes. This opportunity might never come again. His medical treatment would be possible there. Barcelona would cover all of his treatment costs. And most importantly, he would get the chance to play at one of the greatest academies in the world. The family made their decision. The final embrace at the airport. At the end of 2000, a scene unfolded at the Rosario airport. A mother was holding her son tightly, tears in her eyes. His siblings were saying goodbye. And a 13-year-old boy, with a bag on his shoulder, was walking toward the airplane holding his father's hand, not knowing when he would step on this land again. The plane took off. Below, the lights of Rosario slowly became smaller. Leo sat beside the window, looking outside. What was he thinking at that moment? Fear? Excitement? Or was he simply remembering his mother's face? We will never fully know that answer. But we do know this. The thin, shy little boy sitting on that airplane would return through that same sky route a few years later, and his name would become the greatest wonder in world football. But the journey was not easy. After arriving in Barcelona, a completely new battle was waiting for him. The battle of loneliness, the battle of proving himself, and the battle of creating his own place in a world where every boy was once considered a top talent. A 13-year-old boy who left his mother, left his own country of language, and arrived in an unfamiliar city. Would he be able to survive? A teenager who cried alone night after night in a hotel room. How would he transform into the brightest star of the greatest football academy in the world? Chapter 3. The Lonely Nights of La Masia. In a corner of the city of Barcelona, standing in the shadow of the Camp Nou Stadium, there was an old brick farmhouse. Its name was La Masia. This house became the home for players from Barcelona's youth academy, a place where teenage talents selected from all around the world lived, ate, slept, and dreamed together. At the end of 2000, a 13-year-old Argentine teenager arrived in a small room inside this house. In his bag were a few clothes, in his heart was a wave of fear, and in his mind was the image of his mother appearing again and again. On his very first night, Leo understood that this place was going to be much harder than he had imagined. One bed, tears from thousands of miles away. The rooms of La Masia were small and simple. Several boys lived in each room, coming from different countries, some from Brazil, some from Ghana, and some from other cities in Spain. They all had one dream, to earn a place in Barcelona's first team one day. But they were all young, and they had all left their parents behind. For Leo, the first few months were extremely difficult. His father Jorge was with him at the beginning, but because of work, he had to travel back and forth between Argentina and Spain from time to time. On the nights when his father was not by his side, Leo would bury his face in the pillow and cry. His mother Celia, his siblings, his grandmother's grave, the familiar fields of Newell's, everything suddenly felt like it had moved thousands of miles away. His teammates later said that, in the beginning, Leo did not talk much with anyone. He would sit quietly at the dining table and go straight to his room after training. Some people thought the boy was perhaps arrogant or angry. But the real reason was much deeper. A 13-year-old boy who missed his mother from thousands of miles away, hiding his tears every night before going to sleep. The coaches and academy staff noticed this change. They knew that keeping a talent alive required more than just football training. He also needed to remain mentally healthy. So they tried to help Leo connect with others and gave him time. Slowly, very slowly, the ice began to melt. When language became a wall. There was another problem that may have seemed small from the outside but was actually huge inside: the difference between Argentine Spanish and the Spanish spoken in Catalonia. The pronunciation, the way of speaking, and even the meanings of some words were different. In the beginning, teammates would laugh at the way Leo spoke and tease him. For a shy boy, dealing with such jokes was not easy. But this was where one side of Leo's character began to become clear for the first time. He did not argue, and he did not show anger. He quietly endured everything and answered on the field. In every training session and every match, he tried to prove one thing. Even if he could not express himself with words, he was the best with the ball. And that was slowly beginning to happen. The moment Leo stepped onto the field, he became like a completely different person. The same boy who sat silently at the dining table would take the ball and run past one opponent after another, as if he had no fear at all. The coaches watched in amazement as the confidence of this shy boy was completely different when he was on the field. The nights of injections alone. Even after arriving at La Masia, Leo's treatment did not stop. Every night, he had to take hormone injections, this time not from his mother's hands, but by himself, or with the help of someone from the academy staff. Imagine a 13 or 14-year-old boy injecting his own body every night, alone, without his parents, in an unfamiliar country. Messi later spoke very little publicly about this period of his life. But those who witnessed it closely say that this pain created an extraordinary level of endurance inside Leo. Experiencing so much suffering at such a young age either breaks a person or turns them into someone as strong as iron. In Leo's case, it was the second. Gradually, the treatment began to work. His body started growing, although he never became as tall as other people his age. As an adult, his height reached around 5.5 feet. But this lack of height would later become one of his greatest weapons: a low center of gravity, incredible control of the ball, and unbelievable speed in changing direction. All of these became gifts of his physical structure, turning him into a nightmare for defenders. An incident that changed everyone's mind. During Leo's first years at La Masia, there were many moments that elevated him in the eyes of teammates and coaches. While playing for different age groups of the academy, he scored goals and dribbled past opponents in such a way that opposing coaches would often ask after matches, "Who is that little boy?" Slowly, a phrase began spreading inside Barcelona. Someone had arrived at La Masia who was worth dreaming big about. Passing through every age category, he began moving quickly toward the senior team. The boy who once sat quietly in the corner of a room and cried silently was now becoming the most talked-about name in the academy. But the real test was still ahead. Performing well in La Masia's youth teams and earning a place in the senior squad of one of the world's greatest clubs were two completely different things. At that time, players like Ronaldinho were in that team, a superstar who had amazed the entire football world with his magical skills. Was it possible for a 16-year-old teenager to earn a place in that dream team? A question. After passing through the lonely nights of La Masia and wiping away the tears of loneliness, a boy was now standing in front of a massive door, Barcelona's senior team. Waiting there was one of the greatest players in the world, Ronaldinho himself. Would this shy, small Argentine teenager be able to walk through that door? Chapter 4. The Day a Boy Touched the Sky. November 2003. A friendly match was taking place at Barcelona's training ground. The opponent was not Porto's youth team, but FC Porto's senior team. Barcelona coach Frank Rijkaard was standing on the sideline, evaluating the team's young talents. Suddenly, he looked toward the bench and called a 16-year-old boy. Leo stepped onto the field. Within the first few minutes, he did something that shocked the entire stadium. He moved past one opponent after another and showed such incredible control over the ball that even experienced defenders were left stunned. After the match, Rijkaard returned to the dressing room and directly told his assistant coaches, "Bring this boy into the senior team as soon as possible. He is ready." A boy who, 3 years earlier, had sat on an airplane hiding his tears while remembering his mother's face, was now standing in front of praise from one of the greatest coaches in the world. Meeting a prince. At that time, one man ruled Barcelona's dressing room, someone the entire world called the magician of football, Ronaldinho. His smile, his style of play, and every touch of the ball seemed to contain magic. For a shy, quiet Argentine teenager entering this dressing room, the environment could have been extremely intimidating. But the opposite happened. Ronaldinho, who himself had come through many struggles, welcomed Leo from the very first day. He called Leo his little brother. During training breaks, he encouraged him, sat beside him in the dressing room, and took him out for meals. Barcelona's biggest star, a player who had the attention of the entire football world at that time, made time to stand beside a 16-year-old newcomer. This friendship played a huge role in Leo's life. The boy who had always kept himself closed off slowly began to open up through Ronaldinho's company. Even away from the field, he gradually became more comfortable. And on the field, by watching Ronaldinho play, he began to learn how to play with a smile even under pressure and how to express talent with joy. The debut and the wall of a cruel rule. October 16, 2004. In a La Liga match against Espanyol, with only a few minutes remaining, Lionel Messi came onto the field as a substitute, his first match for Barcelona's senior team. He was not even 17 years old. But even here, a problem like a thorn followed him. According to Spain's citizenship laws, there were complications regarding his permission to play as a foreign player because of his Argentine passport. Barcelona fought to complete his Spanish citizenship process as quickly as possible because the club had already realized they had a talent in their hands that they could not afford to lose. During this period, Leo was repeatedly reminded that his path would never become smooth through talent alone. At every step, he would have to overcome some kind of obstacle. From physical limitations to paperwork complications, every stage was a battle. But whenever he stepped onto the field, all those obstacles seemed to disappear. The first goal, the beginning of a new era. May 1st, 2005. In a match against Albacete, after receiving a delicate chip pass from Ronaldinho, Lionel Messi chipped the goalkeeper in the same way and sent the ball into the net, his first senior goal for Barcelona. What happened after the goal is still remembered as one of the most emotional scenes in football history. Ronaldinho ran toward Leo and lifted him into his arms, like a proud older brother celebrating the success of his younger brother. At that moment, it felt as if a symbolic baton had been passed. The journey of football's kingdom had begun moving from one person's hands to another, although no one fully understood yet how great this journey would become. After that, one milestone after another arrived at incredible speed. At just 18 years old, he became one of the youngest goal scorers in Barcelona's history. His style of play, running at incredible speed with his low body position, keeping the ball almost attached to his feet, and moving past defenders one after another, quickly became something unique and recognizable. Fans began comparing him with another Argentine legend, Diego Maradona. Some even started calling him Messi-adona, a nightmare night that could have stopped everything. But this story of rise also had a dark moment. In a 2006 Champions League match against Chelsea, Leo suffered a serious muscle injury. The injury was so severe that he had to spend the rest of that season, and even a large part of the following season, away from the field. For a young player who had only just started showing the world his talent, this period was incredibly frustrating. going to the rehabilitation center every day to slowly recover his body, sitting in the stands and watching his teammates play on the field. This struggle reminded him again of the pain he had experienced during his childhood treatment. But once again, he did not give up. In every rehabilitation session, he gave his maximum effort and followed every instruction from the physiotherapists with complete dedication. And he returned, stronger than before. The day the world was left speechless. April 2007. In the Copa del Rey semi-final against Getafe, Lionel Messi scored a goal that is still considered one of the greatest goals in football history. Starting from his own half, he took the ball, moved past 6 opposing players one after another, ran almost the entire length of the field, and defeated the goalkeeper. This goal was compared to Diego Maradona's famous goal at the 1986 World Cup, known as the goal of the century. That one goal seemed to announce to the entire world, this boy was not just another talented player. This boy might one day surpass everyone. And that is exactly what happened. In 2009, Barcelona won an unprecedented treble, La Liga, the Copa del Rey, and the Champions League, 3 major trophies in the same season. In the final against Manchester United, Leo himself scored an incredible header, despite being only around 5.5 feet tall. The image of that goal is still considered one of the most iconic moments in football history. At the end of that year, in December, the name of the world's best football player was announced on a stage in Paris, the Ballon d'Or. The name called was Lionel Messi, a 22-year-old boy who once left his country because his family could not afford his medical treatment was now standing on the highest stage of world football, holding the biggest individual award. But this story did not end there. Because while he was making history in club football, wearing the jersey of his own country, Argentina, a strange curse seemed to continue following him, reaching finals again and again, and losing again and again. A question at the end. The same boy who was ruling club football, winning Ballon d'Or awards one after another, and becoming the biggest star in the world. Why was this same person returning empty-handed again and again while wearing his national team jersey? Why did he have to hear criticism and even humiliation from the people of his own country? In the next chapter, the pain of losing the 2014 World Cup final, consecutive Copa America defeats, and the story of a man's fear of losing the love of his own people. Chapter 5. The jersey that felt like a thorn piercing his heart. Wearing the Barcelona jersey, Lionel Messi was an unstoppable king. Every season brought new records, new trophies, and new moments of amazement. But whenever he put on the blue and white Argentina jersey and stepped onto the field for his country, he seemed like a different Messi, a man burdened by pressure, filled with uncertainty, and struggling to give his absolute best. This contrast was so obvious that even the people of Argentina began to question at one point, did Messi truly care enough about his country? Or because he grew up in Spain, did Barcelona hold a bigger place in his heart? This question was unfair and cruel, but it followed Leo every single day. One final after another, one heartbreak after another. In 2007, at just 20 years old, Messi led Argentina to the Copa America final. Their opponent was Brazil. The entire country dreamed of a new hero. But in the final, Argentina lost 3-0. For the first time, the shadow of that pain appeared in the eyes of the young Messi, a pain that would return again and again in the years that followed. Then came the 2014 World Cup. In this tournament held on Brazilian soil, Messi gave everything he had. Important goals one after another in the group stage, carrying the team through the knockout rounds. The entire world saw a different Messi, a player who had taken the responsibility of the team onto his own shoulders. Argentina reached the final, with Germany as their opponent. Rio de Janeiro's Maracana Stadium, millions of people watching on television, and a stadium packed with fans. The match went into extra time. In the 113th minute, Mario Götze scored a goal, and everything was over. Germany won the World Cup 1-0. After the match, the cameras turned toward Messi. The golden trophy was being carried past him, yet it was not in his hands. There was deep disappointment on his face, with what looked like hidden tears in his eyes. A short while later, he was awarded the tournament's Best Player award, the Golden Ball. But there was no smile on Messi's face as he held that trophy. Instead, it seemed to make his pain even deeper, because he knew that an individual award could never be equal to winning the World Cup. A stranger in his own country. After losing the World Cup final, when Messi returned to Argentina, what happened created a deep wound in his heart. Some people welcomed him, but many others became vocal with criticism. On social media, on radio and television, and on the streets, people began saying, "Messi does for Barcelona what he does not do for Argentina. He is not truly Argentine anymore. He has become Spanish." These words were deeply unfair. The same person who played every national team match by putting his own body on the line, the same person who blamed himself more than anyone after every defeat, was being called unpatriotic. But Messi never responded publicly. He simply lowered his head, returned to training, and prepared for the next match. Inside, he was breaking apart, but on the outside, he maintained his familiar silence, the same silence he had learned during those lonely nights at La Masia. Another wound in 2015. Just 1 year after losing the World Cup final, Argentina once again lost in the 2015 Copa America final, this time against Chile in a penalty shootout. Messi himself did not miss his penalty that time, but the team still lost. Once again, the same disappointment appeared on his face. One final after another, one heartbreak after another, it felt as if some invisible curse was following Messi and Argentina. The same man who won almost every trophy effortlessly in club football seemed to return empty-handed from every major stage while wearing the national team jersey. Psychologists later analyzed how deeply this kind of repeated failure can affect a person's mental state. A mountain of expectations before every final, followed by a storm of criticism after every final. When this cycle continues for years, even the strongest person can eventually break. And that is exactly what was about to happen. How many times can a person's heart break before they say, "Enough"? In 2016, after another Copa America final, Lionel Messi was about to make a decision that would leave the entire nation of Argentina stunned, announcing his retirement from the national team. In Chapter 6, the missed penalty in the 2016 Copa America final, the announcement of retirement with tears in his eyes, and the story of an entire country begging him to return. Chapter 6. The day a heart broke in front of everyone. June 26, 2016. MetLife Stadium in New Jersey, United States. The final of the Copa America Centenario. Argentina and Chile faced each other, a repeat of the final from exactly 1 year earlier. After 90 minutes and extra time, the match ended 0-0. The result would be decided by a penalty shootout. Messi stepped forward to take the first penalty. The entire stadium watched while holding its breath. This was the man who could make the impossible possible whenever the ball reached his feet. He placed the ball on the ground, stepped back a few paces, and waited for the referee's whistle. Then he ran forward and took the shot. The ball flew straight over the crossbar. An unusual silence fell over the stadium. Messi stood there for a few moments, with his head lowered and his hands on his waist. Then he slowly walked back to his position. In the end, Argentina lost in the shootout. Another final, another heartbreak. An announcement through tears. What happened in the press conference after the match left the entire football world frozen. Standing in front of the cameras, with his voice trembling, Lionel Messi announced he was retiring from the national team. "My time with the national team is over," he said, with tears in his eyes. "I have tried so hard. This has been very difficult for me. For finals, for defeats. I don't think it's meant to be for me." A man who was the biggest star in world football, a player who had no shortage of trophies in club football, this same man broke down in public because he could not win a major title for his country. This moment showed that beyond trophies, money, and fame, Argentina and the national team jersey were deeply connected to Messi's heart. The news spread like lightning. A wave of sadness fell over Argentina. The same people who had once criticized him now realized what they were about to lose. People gathered in the streets and a massive movement began on social media. "No te vayas, Leo. Don't go, Leo." Even Argentina's president at the time publicly requested Messi to change his decision. Teammates, former players, and ordinary people, everyone continued sending the same message. An entire nation suddenly realized that they were about to pay the price for misunderstanding the greatest talent in their history. A battle taking place inside silence. During those months, Messi did not speak much publicly. Inside, he was fighting with himself. On one side were years of disappointment, the burden of criticism, and the weight of failure. On the other side was the deep love for his country, something he could never truly leave behind. His family, especially his wife Antonella and his close friends, gave him time and stayed by his side without putting pressure on him. Slowly, Messi realized that retirement was not the solution. Running away could never be the answer to any problem. The dream he carried in his heart, winning a major trophy for his country, was still alive. Almost 2 months later, in August 2016, Messi announced that he was returning to the national team. This decision was not easy, but it proved an important part of his character. Even after losing, he was not willing to give up. Failure could not stop him, it only made him stronger. The beginning of building a new foundation. Along with Messi's return, a new chapter began for Argentina's national team as well. In the 2018 World Cup, Argentina made a disappointing exit in the round of 16 after losing to France. Criticism returned once again. Many people started saying that Messi's time was coming to an end, and perhaps he would never be able to win anything major with his country. But during this period, an important change took place in Argentina's team. A new coach took charge, Lionel Scaloni, who had also once played for Argentina himself. Scaloni slowly began rebuilding the structure of the team. He gave opportunities to young players, created a family-like atmosphere within the squad, and most importantly, he did something crucial. He built a team not around Messi, but together with Messi. Teammates later said that under Scaloni, the atmosphere of the team had completely changed. Messi himself felt a different sense of belonging in this team, something that had often been missing in previous years. The young players saw him as a leader, someone they wanted to follow and fight alongside. Slowly, match after match, a new Argentina team began to take shape, a team with Messi at its heart, but a team that was no longer dependent only on his shoulders. A man who once decided to remove his country's jersey forever, could he wear that same jersey again and fulfill his greatest dream? A 28-year wait, a wait that had begun even before Messi was born. Would that wait finally come to an end? In the next chapter, the 2021 Copa America, that unforgettable night at the Maracana, and the story of a man's first major title victory with tears in his eyes. Chapter 7. The night at the Maracana, where a 28-year wait came to an end. The year was 2021. The world was still slowly recovering from the impact of the COVID-19 pandemic. In such an unstable time, the Copa America was held. Originally, the tournament was supposed to be jointly hosted by Argentina and Colombia, but at the last moment, the entire tournament was moved to Brazil. Many people raised their eyebrows at the news. Argentina would have to play on the soil of their greatest rivals, Brazil, and Brazil would have the full advantage of playing on their own home ground. But Messi and his team had no time to worry about those things. They had only one goal: to finally bring home a major trophy, for themselves and for the people of their country who had been waiting for years. The birth of a team, not a one-man battle. The Argentina team seen in this tournament was completely different from previous years. Coach Lionel Scaloni had built a team where players like Rodrigo de Paul, Nicolas Otamendi, and Emiliano Martinez stood beside Messi, fighting alongside him and giving everything they had on the field. This was no longer just Messi's team. It had become a family, a group that fought for one another. Throughout the tournament, Messi played extraordinary football. Goals, assists, leadership, in every aspect he became the main pillar of the team. Especially, his incredible free-kick goal against Bolivia reminded everyone why he was considered one of the greatest players in the world. After defeating Colombia in a penalty shootout in the semi-final, Argentina reached the final. Their opponent, Brazil, on their own ground, in front of their own fans. The night of the Maracana. July 10, 2021. The historic Maracana Stadium in Rio de Janeiro, the same stadium where Argentina had lost the World Cup final to Germany exactly 7 years earlier, once again hosted a final. It felt as if fate itself was giving Messi a chance to heal that old wound. From the beginning of the match, just 22 minutes in, Argentina took the lead through a brilliant goal from Angel Di Maria. After that, the entire match became a nerve-wracking battle. Brazil launched attack after attack, but Argentina's defense, especially goalkeeper Emiliano Martinez, stood like a fortress. The final moments of the match were filled with unbearable tension. Every second felt as long as an entire era. Messi stood in the middle of the field, repeatedly looking at the clock, giving instructions to his teammates, and trying to control every ball. Then came the referee's final whistle. A man kneeling on the ground, with tears in his eyes. What happened immediately after the whistle will remain forever as one of the most emotional scenes in football history. Lionel Messi fell to his knees in the middle of the field and covered his face with his hands. His body was shaking with tears. At the age of 34, for the first time, he won a major trophy with the national team. His teammates ran toward him and surrounded him. Some were crying, some were screaming with joy, and some were looking toward the sky with their hands raised in gratitude. Across Argentina, millions of people poured into the streets. In front of the obelisk in Buenos Aires, a massive crowd gathered, waving flags, embracing each other, and celebrating this moment with tears of happiness. Because this victory was not just a trophy. It was the end of a 28-year wait. Argentina's last major title had come in 1993, 6 years before Messi was born. An entire generation had grown up waiting for this trophy. And most importantly, this victory proved that Messi was never indifferent toward his country. Through all the pain and criticism he endured for years, there was only one thing he wanted every moment: to bring smiles to the faces of his own people. The silence of a critic. Interestingly, after this victory, even those who had once been Messi's harshest critics became silent. The accusation that had existed for years, "Messi does not do enough for the national team," disappeared overnight. Messi proved that the rewards of patience and perseverance eventually arrive. In the press conference, holding the trophy in his hands, with his eyes still red, Messi said, "I knew this day would come. I never lost faith. For this team, for these people, this is something I had wanted for a long time." This one victory opened a new door in Messi's life. The same man who had once thought in 2016 that winning something big with his country was not written in his destiny was now standing with a new belief. And ahead of him waited an even greater challenge, the biggest stage in world football, where he had previously suffered heartbreak 3 times. A question at the end of the chapter. Would this one title won at the Maracana give Messi the confidence he needed to win the World Cup? And in club football, would the empire he built at Barcelona continue to survive, or was it about to collapse under the pressure of a financial crisis? In the next chapter, the painful day of leaving Barcelona, the tearful farewell press conference, and the beginning of a new chapter in Paris. Chapter 8. The place where he grew up was the place he had to leave. August 2021. It was just a few weeks after that historic victory at the Maracana. Hundreds of journalists and cameramen gathered in the press room of Camp Nou Stadium in Barcelona. The news had already spread around the world like wildfire. Lionel Messi, the man who had worn the Barcelona jersey for 21 years, would have to leave the club. At first, many people could not believe the news. Messi and Barcelona, these two names seemed inseparably connected with each other. The boy who arrived at the age of 13 with a promise written on a napkin had now become the biggest star in world football, the highest goal scorer in the club's history, and the owner of 6 Ballon d'Or awards. How could this man leave the club? A love story trapped by money. The real reason was financial. Barcelona was buried under a devastating mountain of debt at that time. Years of mismanagement, wrong decisions, and the financial impact of the coronavirus pandemic had pushed the club's debt close to billions of euros. According to La Liga's financial regulations in Spain, a club's total wage structure must remain within a specific proportion of its income. Messi himself had agreed to reduce his salary by almost half, out of his love and loyalty for the club. But even then, the club's overall financial situation was so poor that registering a new contract according to La Liga's rules became impossible. It was a situation where there was no single person to blame, neither the club nor Messi, but the outcome was heartbreaking. Imagine a person who has spent almost his entire life in one place, the place where he first cried because of homesickness, where he scored his first goal, where he grew from a teenager into a legend, and then suddenly that same place tells him, "We can no longer keep you, only because of money." A cry that made hundreds of millions of people cry. August 8, 2021. Messi sat at the press conference table. His wife Antonella sat beside him. Camera flashes were going off everywhere. He began to speak, and within a few seconds, his voice started to tremble. "Honestly," he said, with tears in his eyes, "I was not prepared to say goodbye like this." The entire room became silent. Even experienced journalists were seen wiping away their tears at that moment. Messi continued speaking about how he had arrived in this city at the age of 13, how this club had given him everything, and how his children were born and raised in this very city. For him, Barcelona was not just a football club, it was his home. After the press conference, Messi was taken onto the field of Camp Nou, standing alone in front of the massive empty stadium. Tears were still in his eyes. The picture spread across the entire world within moments, a legend standing in front of the same ground that had made him the greatest, saying goodbye. A new city, a new beginning. Within a few days, the news arrived. Messi was joining Paris Saint-Germain, commonly known as PSG. This French club was emerging as a new force in world football at that time, backed by massive investments from its Qatari ownership. The team already had stars like Neymar and Kylian Mbappé. With Messi's arrival, one of the most talked-about attacking trios in football history was created. But the Paris chapter was not easy for Messi. A new city, a new language, new teammates, and a new football environment. After almost 20 years, he had to adapt all over again. His performances on the field experienced some ups and downs in the beginning. Some French supporters and media outlets became highly critical of him, creating another kind of mental pressure for him, an environment where he had never before been criticized so closely for failure. Yet during his time in Paris, the biggest achievement of his career was still waiting to happen. Because at that exact moment, the greatest stage in world football was approaching, the FIFA World Cup in Qatar. Messi was 35 years old, and he had already announced that this would be his final World Cup. The feeling of one last opportunity. In interviews, Messi said several times that before the Qatar World Cup, he had a strange feeling inside him. The 2014 final, where the trophy slipped away despite being so close to his hands, and the disappointing exit in 2018, all of these experiences created a deep desire within him. He knew this might be his final chance. At the age of 35, there is naturally a limit to physical ability. But this time, he had a different kind of team and a different kind of confidence. The experience of winning the Copa America, a united family built under Scaloni's leadership, and a powerful desire in his heart to finally fulfill the unfinished dream that had remained with him for years. A question at the end of the episode. A 35-year-old legend whose body may no longer be as fast as before, but whose heart still carries the unfulfilled dream of an entire lifetime. Would he be able to finally make that dream come true in the deserts of Qatar? The trophy that had escaped him 3 times. Would it finally be lifted in his hands this time? In the next chapter, the complete journey of the Qatar World Cup, the unbelievable drama of the final, and the story of one man fulfilling the greatest dream of his life. Chapter 9. A lifetime dream fulfilled in the deserts of Qatar. November 2022. The World Cup began in the magnificent stadiums built in the heart of the Qatari desert. Lionel Messi had already announced beforehand this would be his final World Cup. At 35 years old, his body was no longer the same as before. This was his one and only chance, his final opportunity. But the beginning was like a nightmare. A shock that stunned everyone. In the first match, Argentina's opponent was Saudi Arabia, a team that was considered much weaker on paper. Messi himself scored from a penalty to put his team ahead. Everyone thought this was simply the beginning of another easy victory. But what happened in the second half shocked everyone. Saudi Arabia launched attack after attack, scored 3 goals, and Argentina suffered a 2-1 defeat. It was one of the biggest upsets in World Cup history. The entire world was stunned, and Argentine supporters were left devastated. It felt like Messi's final World Cup might come to an end right from the beginning. That night, a deep silence filled the dressing room. But this was the moment when everyone saw how different this team was compared to Argentina's teams of previous years. Coach Scaloni and the senior players came together and united the team. Messi himself spoke with his teammates in the dressing room and reassured them they had to fight together and come back from this situation. A giant slowly awakening. In the very next match, Argentina defeated Mexico, where Messi himself scored a brilliant goal. Then came another victory against Poland, and Argentina reached the knockout stage. In the round of 16 against Australia, Messi scored an important goal in his World Cup history, pushing the team toward victory. In the quarterfinal against the Netherlands, a dramatic and thrilling match, Argentina reached the semifinals after surviving a late equalizer and winning in a penalty shootout. In the semifinal against Croatia, Argentina played one of their best matches of the tournament. In an extraordinary moment, Messi moved past an opposing defender in a way that instantly became viral around the world. Argentina won 3-0 and reached the final. The night of Losail, the greatest drama in football history. December 18, 2022. Losail Stadium. Argentina and France faced each other in the final, with young superstar Kylian Mbappé leading the French team. From the beginning of the match, Argentina dominated. In the first half, a penalty goal from Messi and another brilliant goal from Ángel Di María gave Argentina a 2-0 lead. It felt like the match was almost decided. Across Argentina, people had already started celebrating early. But football never chooses a side so easily. What happened in the final 10 minutes became one of the most unbelievable moments in football history. Kylian Mbappé scored 2 goals within just 2 minutes, bringing the match back to a 3-3 draw. The entire stadium and the entire world seemed unable to believe what they were witnessing. The match went into extra time. There, Messi scored another goal to put Argentina ahead once again, but Mbappé scored again from a penalty to equalize, completing a hat-trick in the final alone, a rare achievement in World Cup final history. Finally, the match went to a penalty shootout. A lifetime of waiting for one man. In the penalty shootout, Argentina's goalkeeper Emiliano Martinez stood like an unbreakable wall. He stopped one shot after another. Argentina's players calmly converted their penalties one by one. When Gonzalo Montiel scored the final penalty, the entire stadium exploded with celebration. Argentina became World Cup champions, winning 4-2 on penalties. Lionel Messi dropped to the ground, covering his face with both hands. His teammates rushed toward him, hugging him, and one after another they formed a pile in the middle of the field. Years of pain, criticism, 3 lost finals, and the emotional retirement announcement of 2016, everything melted away in a single moment and transformed into pure joy. A picture that will live forever in history. During the trophy ceremony, Messi was dressed in a black robe-like garment, Qatar's traditional bisht. Then the Golden World Cup trophy was placed into his hands. His teammates lifted him onto their shoulders, and Messi was carried around the stadium holding the trophy. This image spread across the world within moments and became one of the most iconic scenes in football history. A boy who had left his country at the age of 13 because his family could not afford his medical treatment, who had suffered heartbreak in multiple finals, who once announced his retirement from the national team with tears in his eyes. That same man was now standing at the highest peak of world football, holding the World Cup trophy. After returning to Argentina, the celebration was beyond comparison. Millions of people came out onto the streets of Buenos Aires. The scenes of people hanging from the roof of the team bus and the breathtaking images of millions of fans captured from helicopters showed that this victory was not just about winning a trophy. It was the explosion of a nation's emotions, emotions that had been building for decades. A question at the end of the episode. After a person's biggest dream in life comes true, what do they do next? Do they stop or do they move toward a new goal? For this 35-year-old legend, a completely new chapter was waiting ahead, the story of leaving Europe behind and stepping into a new frontier of football. In the next chapter, Messi's new journey at Inter Miami, the rise of football in the United States, and the story of winning the 2024 Copa America. Chapter 10, A New Sunrise on a New Continent. After winning the World Cup, Lionel Messi had many different paths in front of him. The biggest clubs in Europe were still eager to sign him. A club from Saudi Arabia presented one of the biggest offers in football history, an offer that seemed almost impossible to reject. But Messi chose a path that surprised many people: Major League Soccer in the United States, joining an MLS club called Inter Miami. There were several reasons behind this decision. From a financial perspective, it was not as massive as the Saudi offer, but when combined with ownership opportunities, advertising agreements, and future business possibilities, it became a highly profitable choice in the long term. But more importantly, when considering the lifestyle, security, and future of his children, life in the United States seemed like a much more meaningful decision for the Messi family. Additionally, because the 2026 World Cup was going to be held in the United States, Canada, and Mexico, becoming familiar with the football culture of this country could also become an extra advantage for him. A league that changed overnight. In July 2023, Messi stepped onto the field for the first time, wearing the Inter Miami jersey in a tournament called the Leagues Cup. His debut match felt like something straight out of a movie. In the final moments, he scored an incredible free-kick goal and gave his team the victory. Among the spectators in the stadium were Hollywood stars, musicians, and businessmen. A huge part of America's entertainment world suddenly seemed to become interested in football. From that single moment, an unbelievable journey began. Inter Miami, a team that was near the bottom of the league table at the beginning of the season, started winning match after Messi joined. Messi single-handedly led the team to win the tournament title, which became the first major success in the club's history. Across the United States, ticket prices skyrocketed. Stadiums became packed with fans, even in cities where football had previously received very little attention. Analysts compared this event to decades earlier, when Pelé went to the United States and helped make football more popular there. Messi alone seemed to have changed the future of an entire league. Fighting against age, fighting against injuries. However, this chapter was not always smooth. Messi was already over 36 years old. His body no longer responded as quickly as it once did. He suffered from several muscle injuries and had to remain on the sidelines for weeks at a time. Some critics began questioning whether he could maintain his fitness and competitive level while playing in MLS, or whether this would become a slow ending to his career. But Messi returned every single time and proved once again that age is just a number. Whenever he was healthy, he stepped onto the field with the same familiar magic: perfect passes, unbelievable dribbling, and the natural goal-scoring ability that had not faded even with age. Another crown in 2024. In June and July 2024, the Copa America was held in the United States. Messi once again led Argentina, but this time in a slightly different role, as a symbol of experience beside a younger generation of players. Throughout the tournament, Argentina played strong and confident football, and in the final, they defeated Colombia to win the title once again. During this final, Messi himself was forced to leave the field after suffering an injury midway through the match. With tears in his eyes, he sat on the bench and watched the rest of the team. But his teammates did not disappoint him. Thanks to a goal from Lautaro Martinez, Argentina won their second consecutive Copa America title. Holding the trophy once again, Messi proved that he is not just a player, he is the heart of a team. Even when he is not on the field, his influence continues to live within the team. A question that started circling everyone's mind. After this victory, one question began repeating in everyone's mind. Even after reaching 37, 38, or 39 years old, how long could Messi continue playing at this level? And in 2026, when the World Cup would be held in the United States, Canada, and Mexico, the country where he was now living, would he step onto the field once again and create the historic achievement of playing in his sixth World Cup? Messi himself never rushed to answer this question. But deep inside, through every interview and every training session, one thing was clear. The fire within him, the same fire that had carried him from the streets of Rosario to the World Cup trophy, was still burning. A question at the end of the episode. At the age of 39, can a person truly give everything, his body and his mind, in a tournament like the World Cup? And even if he can, will fate be kind to him one more time, or will the end of this journey become another heartbreaking story? To be continued in Chapter 11. The journey of the 2026 World Cup, the historic achievement of playing in his 6th World Cup, the dramatic semi-final against England, and the emotional final against Spain, where an era came to an end. Episode 11, The Final Battle, The Final Tears. The year was 2026. Lionel Messi was approaching 39 years of age. Standing before him was an opportunity to create something that had never happened before in the history of the FIFA World Cup, playing in a record-breaking 6th consecutive World Cup. In this tournament hosted jointly by the United States, Canada, and Mexico, the biggest celebration in football was taking place in the very country where Messi himself was living. He had already made it clear before the tournament. This would be his final World Cup. Age, his body, and time itself had all combined to make it impossible to continue forever. Every match, every moment, felt like a part of a long farewell journey, a history that no one had ever created before. Even before the tournament began, Messi had already created a record that no one in the 90-year history of the World Cup had ever achieved, becoming the first male player to participate in 6 consecutive World Cups. A boy born in 1987, who once could not even afford the cost of his own medical treatment, had now reached an extraordinary place in football history. Throughout the group stage and the early knockout rounds, Argentina fought their way forward step by step. Messi was still the heart of the team, although now he had to rely more heavily on the younger generation beside him, a generation that had grown up watching him and considering him their inspiration. That night in Atlanta, the final roar of a warrior. In the semi-final, Argentina's opponent was England. The match became an intense, nerve-wracking battle, almost like a physical war. England took the lead, and Argentina found themselves behind for a large part of the game. It seemed like Messi's farewell journey might come to an end right there. But near the end of the match, when time was almost running out, Argentina awakened. They scored 2 goals within just a few minutes, turning the match around and moving ahead of England with a 2-1 victory. As soon as the final whistle blew, Argentina's players threw themselves into each other's arms. Messi, perhaps witnessing the final great dramatic comeback of his career, stood in the middle of the field, exhausted, but proud. Argentina reached the final. Their opponent was Spain, the current European champions, a young and sharp team led by a 19-year-old new wonder kid, Lamine Yamal. The night of East Rutherford. July 19, 2026. New York/New Jersey Stadium in New Jersey. The final. World leaders and entertainment stars were sitting in the stands. A massive musical performance was scheduled during halftime. But inside the stadium, 2 teams were fighting for the biggest trophy in football. The match was tense and difficult. Spain dominated possession throughout the game, creating attack after attack, but Argentina's defense stopped them again and again. Neither team was able to score during regular time. Argentina, using a defensive strategy, failed to register even a single shot on the opponent's goal throughout the match, which was a worrying statistic. The game moved into extra time. Then came a cruel twist. Near the end of the first half of extra time, Argentina midfielder Enzo Fernandez was forced to leave the field after receiving a second yellow card. Now, a 10-man Argentina had to fight against an 11-man Spain, with exhausted bodies, during the second half of extra time. And right at that moment, what was destined to happen finally happened. Spain's Ferran Torres found the back of the net with a perfect shot, assisted by a header from Nico Williams. The scoreboard showed 1-0 in favor of Spain. Argentina desperately tried to find an equalizer in the final minutes, but for a tired team of 10 players, it was no longer possible. The referee blew the final whistle. Spain won their 2nd World Cup title. The final tears of a warrior. Messi stood still on the field for a while, motionless. Then slowly, A deep disappointment appeared on his face. The camera turned toward him, and the entire world saw. Lionel Messi was crying. When he received the runner-up medal around his neck, his eyes were red and filled with tears. The man who had fought wearing the Argentina jersey for 28 years, who had lost 4 finals, who once retired, then returned and finally won trophies in 2021 and 2022, his final World Cup match was perhaps ending with the pain of defeat. Argentina missed the opportunity to become the first team since Brazil in 1962 to win back-to-back World Cups. Coach Lionel Scaloni became emotional during the press conference and said that Messi is the greatest player of all time in football history, and everyone should be proud of him for everything he has achieved. In this tournament, Messi alone scored 8 goals and provided 4 assists. Even on his farewell stage, he proved that age could not diminish his talent. However, on the night of the final, his own performance did not meet expectations, and that disappointment was clearly visible on his face as he left the field. Before walking away, Messi looked back once toward the stands, then slowly walked toward the tunnel. Was this truly his final World Cup match, wearing the Argentina jersey? Even Coach Scaloni said at that moment that he had not yet spoken with Messi about the future, a question whose answer only time will reveal. After the match, French star Kylian Mbappé won the Golden Boot as the tournament's top scorer, while Spain's Rodri received the award for the best player. Messi returned empty-handed, but he carried with him a lifetime of achievements, something that cannot be measured by the result of a single match. Because history will not remember only this one night of defeat. History will remember a boy who grew up on the streets of Rosario, whose body betrayed him during childhood, who left his mother behind and traveled to an unfamiliar country at the age of 13, who fell many times but never stopped, and who eventually brought his nation the trophy that an entire country had waited 28 years to lift. A question at the end of the chapter. A life that began with a small and fragile body, a body that did not even know how to grow on its own. How did that life transform into the greatest name in football history? From this entire journey, what lessons has Lionel Messi left behind for all of us? In Chapter 12, we will learn the complete summary of Messi's entire life and the life lessons that emerged from his story, lessons that can inspire every person to move forward on the path toward their own dreams. Chapter 12, What Messi Left Behind. When a person's life becomes so great and so vast, finding the true meaning of that life cannot be done by simply looking at a list of trophies or records. Instead, we have to look inside those moments when a person fell down and then found the strength to rise again. The story of Lionel Messi's life began in an ordinary family in Rosario, where there was an abundance of love, but limited money. A child whose body could not grow on its own, who had to endure the pain of injections every night, not only to survive, but to keep his dream alive. What we can learn from that story today is something that cannot be found written in any textbook. Those lessons are written in a person's tears, in his silent struggles, and in the history of his repeated comebacks. First lesson: talent is not enough. You need people who believe in you. Lionel Messi could never have come this far alone. His grandmother Celia, who pushed him onto the field when the coach was hesitant. His father Jorge, who left behind his own job and rearranged his life to chase his son's dream across the ocean. His mother Celia, who endured the pain of living away from her child for years, only for his future. A star like Ronaldinho, who stood beside a new, frightened teenager and became his friend. Every one of us has, or needs to have, people like this in our lives. People who believe in our abilities even when we begin to doubt ourselves. Messi's story teaches us that instead of trying to move forward completely alone, it is better to find people around us who truly believe in us. Second lesson: physical limitations never define the limits of a dream. A child who was told by doctors that he might never reach a normal height grew up to become one of the greatest athletes in the world. His weakness, his short height, eventually became the source of his greatest strength. His low center of gravity and unbelievable control over the ball were born from the very physical limitations that once seemed like disadvantages. Every person has some kind of limitation in life, physical, financial, or social. Messi's story reminds us that instead of seeing limitations as enemies, it is possible to transform them into a unique part of our identity. Third lesson: failure is not the end, it is only a chapter. For lost finals, the announcement of retirement from the national team in 2016, a tearful farewell from Barcelona, the defeat in the 2026 World Cup final, where perhaps his final World Cup match also ended in disappointment. Failure was never a rare event in Messi's life. It was a regular part of his journey. The difference was that he never stopped after every failure. Just 2 months after announcing his retirement in 2016, he returned. Even after the pain of leaving Barcelona, he proved himself again in a new country and with a new club. And even after that emotional night in the 2026 World Cup final, his life story could never become just a story of defeat, because before that, he had already won the greatest dream of all, in 2022. Failure is also an unavoidable part of our lives. Messi's story teaches us that the question is never, will I fail? The real question is, what will I do after I fail? Fourth lesson: silence is also a form of strength. Messi was never the person who spoke the most. In the face of criticism, he did not fight back. He did not involve himself in arguments or controversies. He gave his answers on the field through his performances. This quiet determination gave him a level of respect that perhaps thousands of debates could never have earned. In today's world, where everyone is busy expressing their reactions, Messi's life reminds us, sometimes the strongest answer is silence and proving yourself through your actions. Fifth lesson: love and connection to your country never disappear. Even after years of criticism, even after moving away from a club like Barcelona that helped shape him, Messi never forgot his roots. The little boy from Rosario, who loved his country, carried that love safely inside his heart forever. When he fell to his knees and cried at the Maracana in 2021, those tears were not only his own. They represented the tears of millions of people who had waited for years, emotions that he carried on his shoulders. Final words. Lionel Messi's life proves that the biggest dreams are often born from the most difficult circumstances. A thin, sick, shy boy, whose family could not even afford his medical treatment, became the biggest name in football history. Throughout this journey, he lost many times. He cried openly, countless times. He broke down, and then he stood up again. And in the end, his story teaches us the most important truth: success does not mean never experiencing defeat. Success means having the courage to stand up again after every defeat. Anyone, in any situation, can find this same courage within themselves. You may not have Lionel Messi's talent, but his patience, his humility, and his courage to rise again and again, these qualities are hidden inside every person. They are simply waiting to be awakened. Chapter 13, Bonus: the man behind the scenes. On the field, Lionel Messi is a magician. But away from the pitch, behind the cameras, he was a completely different kind of person, simple, private, and deeply family-oriented. In this episode, we will look at the parts of his life that may not have been fully told in the main story. The boy from Rosario, who found love at a young age. Lionel's connection with Antonella Roccuzzo began during his childhood days in Rosario. Antonella's family and the Messi family were friends with each other, and the two of them grew up together, playing and spending time together as children. After Messi moved to Barcelona, their communication became somewhat less frequent, but their friendship continued for years, and eventually it turned into love. In 2017, they got married in a grand ceremony in Rosario. Their 3 children, Tiago, Mateo, and Ciro, were born in Barcelona and grew up alongside their father's career, moving from city to city as his journey continued. Messi has said many times that the greatest source of peace in his life away from football is his family. No matter how big of a star he becomes, when he returns home, he is simply a father and a husband. 2 kings of 2 decades, Messi versus Ronaldo. One of the biggest debates in football history, Messi or Cristiano Ronaldo, who is the greatest? For nearly 2 decades, these 2 men pushed each other to new heights while taking football to another level. In Spain's La Liga, wearing the jerseys of Barcelona and Real Madrid, Their rivalry became one of the greatest sporting stories of an entire generation. Their playing styles were completely different. Ronaldo represented physical strength, speed, and unbelievable dedication, while Messi represented natural talent, creativity, and silent magic. The interesting thing is that, away from the field, their relationship was never based on hatred. Many times, they have shown respect for each other and admitted that the talent of the other pushed them to become even better players themselves. An unbelievable life told through numbers. The statistics of Messi's career sound almost impossible. 8 Ballon d'Or awards, more than anyone else in football history. The highest goal scorer in Barcelona's club history. 1 World Cup, 2 Copa America titles, and countless La Liga and Champions League trophies. But greater than these numbers is his influence. He has changed the way people see and experience football. An entire generation of young players grew up following his style of play, learning that height and physical strength are not the true language of football. Intelligence and technique are. Charity work and social responsibility. The medical struggles Messi experienced during childhood left a deep impact on his mindset. In 2007, he founded the Lionel Messi Foundation, which works to provide healthcare and educational opportunities for disadvantaged children. He has also been involved with UNICEF for many years, working for children's rights around the world. These efforts have not received much attention in the media because Messi himself has never wanted publicity for his charitable work. People close to him say that this quiet generosity is one of the most beautiful parts of his character. Final words. A legend on the field, a simple and humble person away from it. It is this combination of two different sides that has made Lionel Messi someone the entire world will remember, not only as a football player, but also as an inspiration. Thank you for staying with Aspect English from the beginning to the end. Without your support, we cannot move forward. Your support helps us continue our journey and achieve our goals. So please stay connected with us by subscribe, like, share, and comment.